Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. It's Friday, March the 3rd. I'm Tony Haggerty, at Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle, and I'm joined today by Sean Martin, at Sean Martin TCW on the Twitter handle. How you doing, Sean? Is that a fabulous Friday where you are?
It is. I am looking out, and it's as dreary as always, so that warms my heart, Tony.
The Inverclyde Riviera,
yep.
As it's known. Yes, it's as dreary as ever. Well, there you go. Well, we'll try and brighten it up by talking about everything Celtic in the fullness of time. But first and foremost, guys, we do it every day, and we say thank you to everybody who's subscribed already. We're getting more and more subscribers every day, and we appreciate it greatly. And if you want to subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality football journalism covering the club you love, it'll cost you £2 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the website. And as I say every day, it's all for a click of a button, guys. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And we also say thank you to SENECA. And as you know by now, the Celtic Way Morning Briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. And SENECA are a #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out a lot more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Now, Sean, it never stops really, does it, Celtic? But overnight, the departed Josip Juranovic has been talking all about the fact that he left Celtic and mentioned various things. But among it, he has spoken about he was sad that Celtic never did a lot to keep him. And he also mentioned the fact that if Celtic win the treble, that's more medals for him because he's racked up enough appearances. So he was having a wee kind of slide digger a pop there. But yeah, I mean, do we move on from Josip Juranovic? Is he yesterday's man? Considering the fact he mentioned today's man, which is Alistair Johnston. So do we say thank you to Josip for his 18 months, but we're moving on? Suggest he does the same type thing?
I think that's exactly what you do. He was a fan's favourite. He had fireball, all that kind of thing. So people will keep an eye out for him, I would imagine. But ultimately, you mentioned today's man rather than yesterday's man. You wrote last night's newsletter on that very guy. Some selective devilment in him. You said he's a wee bit radio rental, but he's in the right way. Alistair Johnston, of course, we're talking about based off the kind of appearances that he's made so far. Positive impression. Really quite a charismatic character, I think, as well. A lot of presence on the park, as you saw at Hampden. And you wrote a wee, not an ode to him, but like almost just a consideration of what he's done since he came in and how quickly he's learned, wasn't it, Tony?
Yeah, I've done. And you said there, I did say he's a bit radio rental in a good way. And I used the kind of phrase that selective devilment, but he picks and chooses where to channel his aggression. And I was talking about the fact he bounced a few Rangers players into the imaginary plexiglass as if he was playing ice hockey. But he's still got that in him, and that's what I really like about him. Sean, we've spoken about that before, but I think if ever a player has settled in so quickly and embraced it, it's Alistair Johnston. But I also bigged up Ange Postecoglou for bringing him in so quickly. And he was the coolest customer around when it was kind of mooted that Josip Juranovic would be leaving the club. People were up in arms, but Ange was like, fine. I mean, I'll deal with this. I'll sort it. And he did. And he did it before the World Cup. Didn't wait till after the World Cup. Did it before the World Cup. And everybody then watched Alistair Johnston at the World Cup to see what kind of player he was like. Thrown in at Ibrox, first game, flying colours. I mentioned the fact that he could have got closer to Kent for the goal, but that was part of the learning process because Kent never got anywhere near that kind of room on Sunday. You know, he's played two Rangers games and he's got a League Cup winners medal in his pocket already. And in his own words, the first of many. Stick around and the good times will keep rolling, he said. So, excuse me. So, yeah, I like the cut of his jib, I think you would call it, in kind of Glasgow or West of Scotland parlance. And I think a lot of the Celtic supporters have warmed to him already, haven't they?
They have. Pete McGee here giving him very, very lofty praise. He says, we thank Juranovic for his service But his new hero is Alistair Johnston. Feels like he was born to play for Celtic. That is lofty praise. But Tony, coming back to your mention of Ange Postecoglou, within the course of Juranovic's chat, he said that like Celtic, it was true love between him and Celtic, all that kind of thing. He really respects Ange Postecoglou as a coach. But he also said he'd upgraded his career, which is true in terms of league, clearly, but not in terms of club. I think we can all agree with that chat when Union Berlin came up. And then he also mentioned Alistair Johnston signing. He referenced that he'd heard he'd signed while he was out in Qatar, and his reaction to it. And he said, and I'll just quote him, he says, "I was thinking we would have 3 fullbacks. Someone will be on the bench, someone will be in the stands, and someone will be playing, someone will be in the stands, someone will be on the bench. I knew I would maybe not play 2 games in a row, but maybe play the third one. I didn't like that some of that stuff because of the national team. If you're not playing regularly for your club, you won't get called up for the national team. That's the main reason why I left." I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Tony? Is it fair comment, or is it a bit odd if that's the main reason?
I find that I read that this morning and I found it strangely odd. Surely a player, if they're confident in their own ability, would think that they'd be able to see off the challenge of both Johnston and Anthony Ralston. And I know their manager likes to rotate, but if you think you're the number one in that position, then you trust your own self, don't you? Trust your own ability, but also, if it's true love, clearly not true love, is it? Kind of, I love you, but we'll see what's out there. Okay, I'm unsure of myself, and we've had this conversation before about what he was worth and what he actually went for. I thought Josip Juranovic was a decent player. That's all. I spoke about it on here. I took some abuse for saying Celtic would be lucky. Well, I said £12 million got you a seat at a table to start conversation in a round of negotiations, and people were quick to jump on the bandwagon and turn around and tell me he was worth 25 and 30 million, which I thought was nonsense at the time. Proved to be nonsense. And he had a decent World Cup, or he won one certainly notable game in the World Cup, didn't he? But I thought he was a decent player, but that's all. And I thought Celtic did a great piece of business with him. You always banged on about his age, which so as I say, I've moved on from Juranovic. I like Alistair Johnston. If Juranovic stayed, it wouldn't have perturbed me either. But thank you, Josip, for your service. We enjoyed your time while you were here. You are now gone. You are yesterday's man. We welcome today's men, Alistair Johnston, and also Anthony Ralston, not forgetting about him.
I still feel quite sorry for you, Tony, about the abuse you got on, particularly on Twitter, for the Juranovic newsletter, because I remember on this we were both talking about it, and I think I said if anyone goes anywhere near 10 million, he's probably gone, and you were a wee bit more kind of maybe 12, all that kind of stuff, and then you obviously decided to write the newsletter about it, which prompted all the kind of the pelters that you got on Twitter, but ultimately you were proved right. It wasn't actually worth the 20 million because nobody was willing to pay it for him.
I'm not being wise, Sean. I always say it's what your eyes are telling you, what you're seeing. That's what I was seeing. I can't speak for others and what they're seeing. I don't dismiss their opinion or their thoughts, but I was being brutally honest with my own assessment of Josip Juranovic, and I couldn't see what other people were seeing in him to brand him a player that was in the same worth bracket as say Kieran Tierney, which I just couldn't see. But and I say I never shouted anybody down. They're entitled to their opinion as much as I am. I just put it out here on this platform and wrote the newsletter, and it kind of startled me as to the difference of opinion on Josip Juranovic. But I'll ask the Celtic supporters now, who would they rather have, Josip Juranovic or Alistair Johnston? I think the answer would be quite startling. I think we'd all agree that they'd probably prefer Alistair Johnston. Now, he's had a flying start, granted, but there were games where Josip Juranovic, I thought, was, found wanting at times. But yeah, he won 2 trophies with Celtic, and he also referenced the fact that he could win more because
I'm going Going to put this up from my hash. He thinks Juranovic should rewrite history by implying he was maybe pushed. Thinks Celtic had no choice but to cover bases given the movement rumours around them, and that would have extended back to the summer transfer window as well. So I think he's got a point there. I think it's only, I mean, we all said it at the time, very early to get in a replacement, but you would rather have the replacement in rather than not. So I think we all rightly credited Celtic for the way they've gone about their business in the last few transfer windows, and that includes getting Alistair Johnston in before Juranovic left. Now, whether you think that he is rewriting history or whether he's just given his point of view is a different matter. And again, what you've touched on with the valuation, whether you think he was worth more than what he went for or not, is almost another matter as well. And I never quite did think he was the 20 million mark, as we said. That said, after the World Cup, I thought it might have went up a wee bit higher than what I'd initially thought. It didn't. It kind of stuck about the same price. But I think what Andrew Galea said there about he won a couple of trophies, he was quite popular and he'll be remembered fondly. That probably sums it up. What I would say, Tony, that my ultimate takeaway is when you see him mentioning the respect for Ange Postecoglou, but also kind of hinting that maybe he thought the club would have tried harder, is ultimately I think it's clear that even from the outside he was up for leaving. Not only given that he actually left, but just the whole way that he was saying it. Given how much he says he respects Ange Postecoglou, he will have known that once your eye is wandering, Ange isn't going to try to make you think otherwise, beyond pointing out that the club you're at should be enough. So it's good that they've still got that respect for each other, but ultimately I think he must have known once he was talking about going that he wasn't really going to be telling him, oh no, you need to stay.
Yeah, I think you credit the manager here in terms of who were the two players that intimated they wanted to leave. Josip Juranovic and Georgios Giakoumakis. Yeah. Who are the two players that have since left? Mm-hmm. No distractions. You don't want to play for Celtic? Fine, there's the door. We won't stand in your way. If you can get a club and sort it out, so be it. You know, good luck, as you said before, finding that happiness once you leave Celtic. And to talk about he loved the club and all that's fair enough. You get that, but James Forrest said it as well. He spoke to players that have left Celtic and they wish they hadn't. So don't know if Juranovic is maybe seeing that the grass isn't always greener, but he might be earning more money, but you don't know. As I say, that's fine. When players leave the club, it affects them in different ways. But you know, the manager, as you say, though, just not putting up with it. Players that he wants, players that are fully committed to the club, and he doesn't want it becoming a sideshow, or a circus, or a distraction to any other players in the dressing room by filling their heads with you could get X amount going elsewhere. There was two protagonists in January who agitated for a move, and they've both got it. And I'm not saying they were bad influences in the dressing room, far from it, but the manager did not allow it to fester and become any kind of influence in the dressing room with other players. You want to leave, you leave. We'll continue in the path we're down. And that's what I really like. How many times you've seen these things drag on and it affects the team morale, it affects dressing rooms, stuff like that. You nailed it there, son. He's not going to put up with that. You know, you're 100% committed to this club, or there's the exit door. And you bear them no ill will, because they both, excuse me, they both gave Celtic, 18 months of good service. And they will be fondly remembered, but like the manager says, Celtic are moving on. Players will come and go, favourites too. Get used to it. They've gone, so they become, as I said, they're yesterday's men, and you work with what you've got. And at this minute in time, I think Celtic are in a good place, having parted company with both those players.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of comments coming in just pointing out he's a player, he's entitled to go to further his career if he feels that's where he would further it. Obviously, we've said it's a better league, there's no doubt about that. It's not a bigger club, although they are currently enjoying a really, really good season, so they're third in the Bundesliga. He's hoping, and he said in that interview that he's hoping that he's back at Parkhead in the Champions League next year. With Union Berlin, they're obviously doing well in Europe. Knocked out Ajax, I believe, the other week.
He did, yes. Scored, didn't he? Juranovic scored.
Yeah, did he? Aye. So I mean, he's for the rest of this season, he's in for a real good season. Technically a title fight. I mean, they're only 3 points behind Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, but they are only, I think, 2 points ahead of it might be Frankfurt that's below them. So they could easily slip in. They might end up not in Europe at all, but it could be Conference League or Europa League rather than Champions League. He's obviously hoping it's Champions League, and more power to him if that's where he gets. And I think to come back to one of the first commenters, you bid him good luck. You probably will look out for his results, but ultimately, yeah, there's another right back in the building that's kind of starting to steal people's hearts, I think, in a way. But I'm going to put this up. We'll come back to him later on. David Holmes, the main man, is still the bricky. Jason Lee, Tony Ralston is the right back of my heart. We'll discuss him again later on, because don't forget about him is what I would say.
Yeah.
Alistair Johnston has been impressive. Juranovic was also playing well for the most part when he was playing. But coming back to those power rankings, the last update, he met the minutes threshold, and Tony Ralston has been playing fantastically well when he's been called upon this season. It's just he got injured at the wrong time around about the Christmas period there, because it meant that he was stepping out of the team. Hatate had to play right back, all that kind of stuff. And then when he came back, Johnston was eligible to play. He got injured again. Johnston obviously got thrown in for that derby, and he's kind of made that right back slot has since then. He's fit again now. It's an actual competition again. But when he gets the game time's the question.
Yes, correct. And that's now Anthony Ralston's challenge to challenge Alistair Johnston, isn't it? Mm-hmm. For the game time. But you know, the manager's penchant for rotation. I'm sure he'll get minutes once he proves that he's fully fit or he's fully back, and his fitness is bang on.
For what it's worth, that when we done that strongest 11, Tony, I still plumped for Ralston at right back. Maybe the Hampden performance might have made me reconsider it from Alistair Johnston, but my rationale was that last year when me and you done it at the end of the January transfer window, I picked Ralston over Juranovic in the strongest 11 partly because Juranovic had played a lot at left back, although he was preferred in the League Cup final when both were ready, all that kind of stuff. He was clearly Ange's first choice. Statistically, Ralston was off on more in virtually every category. He'd also played more at right back at that point. So I kind of used the same rationale, and I was saying, well, there was only I think a half a football between the minutes that Ralston had played and the minutes that Johnston had played, and Ralston was off on more in every category. So it was like, well, Ralston's a stronger right back. Again, the Hampden performance might have influenced it if it was after it we did it rather than before it. But I don't forget about Ralston is what I would say, because he has been doing really, really well this season in his minutes that he's been called for.
How can you forget about the bricky? I mean, come on. How can you forget the bricky? Indeed. Now, Sean, the bandwagon moves on to Paisley. Don't mention September, Black September, Paisley, but it has to be addressed. Celtic return to the scene of the crime, Sean. Their only crime this season when they lost a match 2-0 to St Mirren and Paisley, who were well worth it that day. Celtic had the proverbial bad day at the office, but St Mirren were excellent that day. Celtic played in the grey strip. You know, big boy did it and ran away. Dog ate my homework. You can use all the excuses you want, Sean. Celtic were, as I said to someone on the DM chat, Celtic were bouffing that day, weren't they? That's the other word for it. They were just absolutely bouffing. And yeah, I think a difference, Sean. I think both teams are in a different headspace going into this one, aren't they?
I think so. Celtic shrugged that off as easily as what you would hope they would have shrugged it off, because a blip can become a blot, can end up taking over a full page if you let it get to you. They didn't. They shrugged that off domestically and have been imperious since then. So it didn't develop into anything more than what it was, which was a bad day. Put it that way. They still created enough that day to do more than what they came away with. A 2-0 defeat was maybe flattering, but St Mirren did play well. Whether or not the grey strip had anything to do with it, I don't know. Can't possibly comment. I suppose we'll see on Sunday if they believe it had anything to do with it, a la Man United under Fergie. But ultimately, I think you're right. They do come into it in different fettle. I think when I was looking at as I always do, I was looking at the kind of form and all that. St Mirren come into it. It's weird. It's weird form when you look at St Mirren. A draw, a win, and a loss in their last 3, Tony. But see, when you widen it out, it's 3 losses in their last 5. But when you widen it out again, it's actually 4 wins and a draw in their last 10. So it's a hard team to gauge in terms of what's going to turn up. But they're 5th in the league. They are a good team. They're having a good season by their standards. They're ahead of Aberdeen with the same games played. Also ahead of Livingston, although Livingston have got a game in hand and could go above them. But specifically at home, which is obviously where Celtic have lost their only league game this season, their actual home form's middling. See, in terms of the league, it's 5th best home record, so it's not exactly as if they're setting it alight. You've got Celtic, Rangers, obviously, but even that, it's 5th is mid-table. But overall, it's 8 wins, 4 draws, and 2 defeats from 14. So I think that is actually good home form. It's just that other teams maybe have slightly better home form. And I'd put it in this sense: they've taken the same number of points at St Mirren Park that Hearts have at Tynecastle. So I think it's going to be a hard place to go again. But I don't see lightning striking twice, Tony. Do you?
No, I don't. Derek Crawford's got the memo. You can see Celtic giving him an in the rest, cracking that card, and he says, "You're learning, Derek." That's what we like to hear. Defeat was simply a blip. But what I did admire about St Mirren at the cup tie, despite the fact it finished 5-1, they did have a go. They came to play football. A 2-0 game, they kind of sat in and had a game plan to actually stop Celtic from playing. And then when they got their chances, they took them. So, I'm not sure what St Mirren will turn up this time. They'll be mindful of the fact that they had a go at Celtic Park and ended up coming off 5-1 losers. Or do you sit in again and try and, everything went for St Mirren that day. Celtic were terrible, and they, as I say, they were quite clinical when the opportunities presented themselves. So, as I say, I don't know what St Mirren are going to turn up, but they have caused Celtic problems. Celtic need to be mindful of that. But as I said to you on Monday, I'm glad that there's that edge to it, because sometimes with cup finals you can have a wee dip. Because I think I was talking to, I'm sure it was Steve McGrory actually that reminded me that I think last season after the League Cup final win against Aberdeen, Celtic drew 0-0 with St Mirren.
They did, 22nd of December, yep.
Yeah. So he was pointing that out to me, and it was Steve that I said that Celtic were bouffing. That's to be fair. How you doing, Steve? Hope you're listening. So I'm mindful of that you can have a wee bit of a come down after such a kind of high and and exhilaration from winning the trophy. So I'm glad there's that extra edge to this game in Paisley on Sunday that Celtic will want to right that wrong from early in the season. And I know they've played them and beat St Mirren, but they have to go there, as you said, go to the same place and kind of exercise that demon, if you want to call it that.
It's almost, and I like to use the box analogies, but like when someone suffers an upset loss, like Lennox Lewis,
yes,
the famous one, an upset loss and come back. Was it Rahman? Was it he get beat? Hashim Rahman. Get beat, upset loss, shock. The first thing you want to do is you want to go and you want the rematch. You want to beat them again, just to put everybody's mind at ease that was just an upset. That was just an off day. All that kind of stuff. The Celtic have played them since and beat them well since. But still, I'd like to see them do it at St Mirren Park, I suppose. Whether they put any stock in that or not, I suspect Ange Postecoglou probably won't. He'll probably dismiss that line of thought later on at the presser. He'll probably just say, like, every game's different, every game's its own challenge. We play our own game, all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, from our point of view, I like talking about that kind of stuff because it does give you an edge. On that last game, David Ferguson asked who was in the back four when St Mirren beat Celtic, and Pete McGee said what was the team. So I'll just give you the full team. So I've got it in front of me, which was Hart in goal, back four at Anthony Ralston, Stephen Welsh, Maurice Jentz, Greg Taylor, midfield three of McGregor, Moy and Turnbull, and then up front it was Abada, Kyogo and Maida. Still a strong team, still a team that's capable of beating St Mirren, Tony. But the one glaring omission there, which I'm sure you were just about to say, is no Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Yes.
Which always affects the players round about him.
Yes, correct. And and listen, we'll try to predict an 11, which would be pretty difficult because you look at, excuse me, you look at Haksabanović's cameo on Sunday in the League Cup final. You say to yourself, no, he was looking sharp, wasn't he? Granted, he missed a couple of sitters, but he looked good when he came on, and he looked like somebody who's bursting to it. I actually think he was trying a bit too hard to score and get on the score sheet, and but he was just someone who had been unleashed, wasn't he, from the traps, and he got going. And does he come into your thinking? Possibly. Can you drop Maida? You know,
Yes.
Can you well, there you go.
I'll come to why I might, because I back my either up to the hilt, but I'll come to why when we come to maybe selection quandaries and different things. But
Jason Lee saying Starfruit played like a god versus Rangers. Correct. Yep. He was my man of the match on Sunday. Myself and Sean kept looking at each other and saying, "Is that Starfelt or Beckenbauer there?" You know, we were laughing, weren't we? Just he had an absolute stormer. Apart from the blips near the end, which came within minutes, seconds of each other, and people were jumping onto that. But that apart, he was pretty solid, and he was my man of the match. Johnston was a man of the match contender as well. You know, Hatate is superb, and Moy when they were on the park were excellent, and they they created the goal. So yeah, Derek Crofty, I think because of that, but the real strong team, wouldn't be surprised if Abada starts. Yep, possibly.
Maybe. His last start was actually his only start in the last 5 was against St Mirren in the Cup. Abada, and he get an assist in that game, obviously. I'm going to throw this up because it leads me into the head-to-heads that I've got marked down. Patrick McLaughlin. Celtic haven't scored a goal at St Mirren Park yet under Ange because it was 0-0 in the first season, which is the game that Steve McGrory was telling you about. On the head-to-heads, Tony, Celtic have won 5 of the last 7. 1 draw, 1 loss, obviously that famous loss in September. But they've kept 5 clean sheets in 7 as well. At St Mirren Park, they lost that last visit, obviously. But before that, they hadn't lost since 2013. I know one of those, as Patrick rightly points out, was a 0-0 draw. So technically, Ange Postecoglou's record there isn't great, but it's only 2 games. But since 2013, before that was the last time they'd lost. So that was 11 games, 8 wins, 3 draws. So, yeah, and another way of looking at it, as I just said, is that Celtic are winless in 2 because they drew in that December 2021 game. But I think that would be maybe not so much glass half empty as 3/4 empty to look at it that way. But
well, here's the man himself, Steve McGrory. Morning, Steve. Morning, Tony and Sean. St Mirren will be different too. Erahon, Sol, Gallagher and Young get out. It won't be easy, but he reckons Celtic should have enough to win by 2.
Well, they played. It's funny she mentioned Declan Gallagher because there was no kind of update because I was listening to Stephen Robinson's kind of post-match stuff just to see if he said when he thought he would be back or whatever. But I was kind of thinking probably not from the start. I mean, Kyogo start. He's in too fine form for that. But I would like to see O up against Declan Gallagher. But obviously, if he's not playing, that's by the by. But I did notice that they've been playing Alex Gogic. They did play Alex Gogic at centre back as part of their back 3, back 5 against St Johnston the other day, and I'm wondering if that is what they'll go with again. And I'll be interested to see how he copes in a fairly unfamiliar position if Kyogo's buzzing about him. Yes, that could be something to watch.
But I'm still intrigued with I like to look at Haksabanovic.
I mean, spoiler alert.
I think he'll be in my starting 11.
Spoiler alert. He's in mine. As you'll have seen if you looked at the shell that's in the system. But and I mean, we'll come to the maybe certain areas, but just before we move on from St Mirren, and this will inform it why I've ended up going for Haksabanovic is what kind of game I think it'll be primarily. So St Mirren have got the joint lowest average possession in the league, right? Which is maybe natural, just the way that they play. But you ally that, Tony, with the fact that they've got the third stingiest defence, the fact that they don't press particularly high, and they've got the worst challenge intensity in the league, which means that they're not that active in trying to win it back when they do lose it, right? So even by Celtic's lofty standards, that could be a really ball dominant day. That could be like 80% possession. I mean, obviously an early goal would be key, and it changes everything, an early goal. But if that's the kind of game that it's going to be, you can kind of see where my thought process is going with maybe Maeda won't get the space. Maybe Haksabanovic's guile is what you're looking for.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It might be that kind of game where he gets a start because he doesn't usually get a start now. So
yeah, I think it could be Kraft and Guile.
Yeah.
On Sunday to break St Mirren down. Because you see, and there might not be that space. AKH 2001 wants to see Haksabanovic and Iwata. Iwata
did well, but I don't see him starting.
No, I thought he did well too, to be fair. I thought he solidified that midfield and Celtic got a grip again. And it wasn't surprising that they had those chances late on, because I think he came in there and I think, the rhetoric that came out that Rangers had a good 20, 25 minutes, I'm not buying that. Rangers had a good 10, 15 minutes tops. But when I looked at the highlights back, Joe Hart didn't have a save to make.
No, he literally didn't. I mean, he scored a goal, but he literally did not make a save.
It was territorial stuff. They were winning second balls and 50-50s for a... Callum McGregor actually said it was a 10 to 12 minute period. He was very precise,
because he feels every minute of that, I think.
Yeah, of course.
We've not got it.
And when you're sitting there watching it, it looked a lot longer, didn't it? Because I looked at you one point and said, Celtic are not at the races here. But when I went home in the cold light of day and watched it again, they regained their composure and regained the initiative in the midfield. And Iwata was a big part of that. But I guess when you're there, it feels a bit more kind of, I don't know, something that you can't control. And I think everybody saw Celtic possibly giving up a 2-goal lead, which was unthinkable. But it didn't turn out that way. And Derek Crawford saying Cal Mack ain't getting rested. We all know what he's like. Don't think he'll be rested either. To be fair, don't think he'll be rotated.
I think Steve McGrory's got a great point here, which is why it ends up getting into my head trying to do these predicted 11s when there's midweek games, because he says essentially it's 3 games in 7 days, so there will be rotation. For me, the question is, does he rotate more in the first game of that, the middle game of that, or the last game of that? Because remember, it's a double header against Hearts.
Yes.
One of which is a must-win. They're all must-win, but one of which is the very definition of a must-win, in that it's a cup tie. So that's where it starts getting into my head, and I wake up in a cold sweat going, who am I going to pick for this predicted 11, Tony? I think you should be the expert. You get 11 out of 11 for a cup final.
I didn't want to bring that up, Sean. You know me, mild mannered janitor. But
I'm going to say, just before I forget, I'll put it in the comments. When I was talking about who wasn't playing in that last game at St Mirren Park, I mentioned Cameron Carter-Vickers. That is a great plug for Alan Morrison's latest column, which is on the site today, which is, I've headlined it, Cameron Carter-Vickers taught Connor Goldson a lesson and it won Celtic the Cup. Because Alan has gone into, there is stats in it. Alan's obviously a data guy, but primarily he's looked at their performances on that day and basically how each of them, being the main central defenders for their team, the central defensive leaders for their team, how each of them reacted to potential stressful situations. And basically, and it probably won't surprise any of you, but digging into it is really interesting, that Cameron Carter-Vickers stood up where Connor Goldson shrunk slightly. And Alan's making the point that as much as there were other players that were really, really good on the day, and Kyogo scored twice and Hatate was brilliant and all of that, sometimes it's what you do at the back that feeds that confidence throughout the rest of the team. And I think the way Alan put it was, such moments, cup finals can be won or lost by how someone responds to a stressful situation. Yeah. Cameron Carter-Vickers, and again, this will not surprise any of you, he reacted exactly how you would hope he would react, whereas his opposite number didn't. And I'll put it like the comments. It's a very interesting piece.
Yeah, it's a good piece. Always is with Alan, to be fair to him. Derek Crawford, because I'm strongest team available until the league is Celtics, then play some of the B team who are playing very well, i.e. Dawson and Vata, if Vata is back fit.
Yep, the Martin O'Neill method of near the end of the season, if you've won it, give the likes of Maloney and stuff, and I think Jamie Smith and all them their debuts. But I have no problem with that at all. You know, I kind of look forward to seeing youngsters come through, as I think everybody does. I think, except for that situation, the other situation is injury crisis. But even that, the depth of the squad and the senior players that are there, it's very, very hard, even in that situation, for B teamers to get a game. You've seen it with the right back crisis, if we're going to put it that way. It was Hatate that played there rather than any of the right backs from the B team, so it's very difficult for them to break through. I've said that before, but all they can do is impress at B team level, which several of them are. If they're not going to get first team football at Celtic, they're going to need to look at a loan move, I think.
Yes, I agree with that. Now, here's a comment, Sean, that you might like from Dyson's bald head. Hit that like button, guys. 360 watching, only 16 likes. Great content. He's taking 3-0 on Sunday. Thank you very much, Dyson's bald head. whoever you are.
Your tenors in the post.
It's a great name, to be fair. That's why I flicked that up. That's very kind.
I mean, just I've got a couple of stats, Tony, before we move on to the team selection quandaries properly. But just want to point out, I said that St Mirren have got the third stingiest defence, right? But they've actually conceded the joint most goals from penalties in the division, right? But I don't know how much you can read into that these days. I don't know about you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're rash in and about their own box because, well, quite frankly, VAR has shown that it's not consistent in what it awards for penalties, so they might have just been unlucky with a few of them.
Will that trouble Celtic? Do you see them getting a penalty on Sunday?
I don't know, Tony. You can never predict a Celtic penalty accurately, I don't think, but we'll see.
We'll see. Okay, we'll cross that when we come to it. What's the other stat?
No, that was it.
All right.
That was it.
Penalties, but
I think that's it.
I mean, it's a strange one, that, isn't it? Because obviously, did you say they give away the most penalties here, Sean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, sorry, no. I don't know necessarily how many they've gave away, but they've conceded the most. So they've conceded 8 from penalties, which is joint most with Aberdeen. For instance, maybe someone's gave away 10, but they've only conceded 7, that kind of thing. I don't know, so I can't put it in quite those terms. But they've conceded the most from penalties in the league. So
they did concede a VAR penalty at Celtic Park in the cup tie, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Which ended up with the player being sent off as well, didn't it?
That was the one that was like one of them actually handballed.
Yeah. It was difficult to see. But
again, I don't think the referee had any choice, or the VAR had any choice at that point. Because once you decide that it is a handball, then it has prevented a goal. So you need to send him off.
That was a textbook rule book penalty award, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And red card award. People make this phrase by the letter of the law. So by the letter of the law, he had to go, and the penalty was awarded for that reason. So that's fair enough.
Reminds me of Line of Duty.
Indeed. Now, Sean, you were talking about selection quandaries. Does the manager have selection? I'm going to say quandaries because they're not dilemmas or headaches, because they're good quandaries to have. Actually, I was going to say the word there. He's lucky to have that kind of deck.
Yeah, he is lucky, but only insofar as you create your own luck by signing these players, I suppose. But it's always a quandary because he's got so many players. We only touched on it for 2 seconds there about the options for out wide. And you can see why. Well, one, why we keep doing these predicted 11s, because it's not always obvious. Yeah. And 2, why it gets into our heads a wee bit.
It's not going to be obvious for Sunday's game, Sean. I'm thinking the back four's kind of untouchable at the minute, isn't it?
I reckon it probably is, but I would throw out there that despite everything we said about Alistair Johnston, I do really want to see what Ralston does when he gets a shout to play again. Whether that will be Sunday or not, who knows? But I'm expecting him to play at least one of those 3 games.
Would you risk Ralston away to St Mirren in a tricky game where
I don't know if it's a risk.
Demons?
I
think.
I suppose insofar as he's not been playing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
In terms of it being Ralston, I don't necessarily think it's a risk. But yeah.
And your midfield, do you rest any of that midfield who got a rest actually on
Tony with the midfield? It's just every week. It's O'Reilly or Moy. It's a toss up still for me on any given day. I suppose I'll go O'Reilly, but with no real confidence again either way, because I mean, again, you're the reigning champ, 11 out of 11. So who do you reckon? Moy again?
Do you know what? I'm inclined to think you might go with O'Reilly too. To be fair, just to give the kind of guys who put in, because I thought Moy was excellent on Sunday, and then he came off, but they do need a break, at times. And as I say, it is a toss up with Moy and O'Reilly, so it's not.
Any room for Turnbull? Curtis is asking, Tony.
Not for me, Curtis.
From the start, no.
From
the bench,
from the start, no. No.
From the bench, though?
From the bench, possibly, yeah. And people are talking about Iwata as well, so, yeah, possibly Iwata coming on again So, yeah, I got the final 11 correct also. Well done, Derek. Good man. And I think we've done well. Spoiler alert for the front three, haven't we? Haksabanovic is going to come in.
Yeah, aye. I mean,
Jota
up front, up front, I think I take it we're both agree Kyogo's going to play.
Yeah, Kyogo will play.
He's undroppable, but as I said earlier on, I'm keen to see you up against. Steve was saying Declan Gallagher's out, so up against Gogic if he plays at the back, because Gogic is quite physical in midfield. So I presume he's going to be physical at the back as well, but that'll be later in the game anyway, I reckon, because I think Kyogo will start. But on the wings, I mean, again, Abada's only start the past 5 games was against St Mirren in the Cup, and he got an assist. Is there a shout for him? Given all I said about the kind of game I've already said, could it be Haksabanovic's guile over Maida's intensity on the left? I don't know, Tony. I think I probably will go Haksabanovic because I've written it in the thing, although I've not wrote my entry for it yet. I kind of want to see, and I've said this before, I want to see Haksabanovic, Kyogo and Jota together. But whether it will be or not, anyone's guess, I think.
Yeah, you've got to keep playing Jota on the wing, even if it's just to hear Ellie Dixon's version of the song. It's absolutely magnificent. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. It's brilliant. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see Haksabanovic come back into the side, and I think this is kind of an ideal game. Got a taste of it on Sunday. Should have scored a couple, actually. I just think he's bursting and raring to go, and I think you maybe need that. You know, we're talking about guile and craft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he scored a wonderful goal against Ross County when he bent it in. You know, he's capable of that, and I like that about him. So I think that might be the afternoon to unleash Haksabanovic, and I'll put him in place of Maida. Maybe another one that could do with being rotated, just rested, because his energy levels are something else, to be fair. And and I think Jota, I don't think we would play Jota after his quieties in the final, and Ange agreed with McCoist on that. But I always think in Jota you have a potential match winner at any given time. Jota on the wing, Jota on the wing. Indeed, I just think Jota can give you something a bit different. But again, you spoke about earlier about the space. If Jota's space is restricted, then he might not play Jota.
Yeah, maybe. Potentially.
Again, tying yourself in knots about.
I mean that as I say, that's probably the front three I'll be going with. I think you could make a shout for Abada to maybe come back in for a start because he's not had many lately. And yeah, Jota was quietish. I agree with the quietish thing because he had a couple of good moments in the final. I thought, especially in the first half. But given the type of game, I think it might be. Yeah, I think going for guile over intensity. I mean, they're all intense. They are all intense, but it's just nature. Yeah. That's why I was saying about Haksabanovic. I'd be intrigued. Actually, I'm going to put this up because I'd be intrigued to see him up against Ryan Strain.
Yeah.
Because he has been really good for St Mirren this season, both statistically and performance-wise. Whether it would be up against Jota or Haksabanovic, in my team it would be Haksabanovic would be up against. So that just leaves me to decide whether it's Jota or Abada on the other wing. I've got Jota at the moment, but whether I might talk myself into Abada or not later today, I suppose you'll need to see when it comes out tomorrow, the predicted 11s.
Brian Lennon, front three will be Hacksaw, and Abada. Oh, there you go. That's it. That's us told. Haksabanovic, and Abada up front, John.
Doubt it, but maybe. No, I mean, it could be. You never know. This is what I'm talking about with these predicted 11s. There is a reality in which we look at that team line on Sunday and we've each got about 6 out of 11, and that is the front three.
Now, okay, can't put it off any longer. Prediction time.
Do you want to go first on me?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll say 3-0, the leather belts.
Right, okay. There might be a 3-0 written down here. But to be different, I'll go 2-0. I'll say it would be quite a difficult one, but it will be a difficult start, but ultimately quite a comfortable 2-0.
Okay, Ryan O'Hare agreeing with me, 3-0. Jerry Smith, 5-0. Come on, boys. Yeah, I just 4-1. Michael Ross says 4-0. Kevin Ferrier, Davey O'Rourke going for 5-0. Convincing Celtic wins, basically, Sean. If the pitch
Yep,
is
apart
good,
from
then...
FS, who says 2-2.
Oh, FS 2-2. Oh, there you go.
That will cross them into St Mirren Park Bogey Stadium territory. St Mirren Park, the New Almondvale.
Well, FS, Rolling Chives will tell your opinion. 2-2, he says, that's fine. Kirsty O'Connor 3-1, Andrew Galea 3-0, all second half. There you go. Well, there you have it. Derek Crawford says 4-0, Gary McDowell 2-0.
Before we wrap it up, Tony, I'll throw this in because it went a laugh. 420 somewhere says, Sean the start man, Martin sips his cup, clogs start turning, football's rain man.
He's not wrong. I bet you're an excellent driver as well. But if you know, you know. Yeah, indeed. Excellent. Well, there's 45 minutes, Sean. There's a half of great Celtic chat. Always enjoy it. Guys, thanks for your contributions. Couldn't do it without you. As we say, we like the interaction. We love bouncing off each other, everybody, and what your thoughts are. We always say it's result dependent, isn't it?
Yep.
In terms of having a good weekend. Hopefully Celtic can have another beautiful Sunday, defeat St Mirren, and as they tick their way down to hopefully retaining their title, Sean.
Yep.
See how it goes with 12 to go. But yeah, it's on to Paisley. Score to settle in Paisley, I think you'll find, haven't they? We'll see how that goes. We'll see what Ange and whoever is put up says at the respective press conferences today. We always look forward to that. But as we always implore you guys, or we ask you certainly, hit that subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Thank you to everybody that has so far. It will cost you £2 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the website. Put a couple of things up on the comment section today. Alan Morrison's piece on Cameron Carter-Vickers and Connor Golson. There's my own piece on Alistair Johnston as well. Just sort of saying he's settled in very well. He's a wee bit radio rental, but hey, we like that, don't we? And we also say thank you to SENECA. And as everybody knows, the Celtic Way morning briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. And SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. So thank you to them, and thank you for joining us, guys. Have a wonderful weekend, Sean. Or is it Rain Man? I don't know. I don't know what to call you now. All sorts of names, but there you have it. I'll stick with Sean for the time being.
Dustin Hoffman, man.
Dustin Hoffman, indeed. Nice one. But thanks, Sean. First class as always. Take care. Have a fabulous Friday, guys.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.